I think the greatest factor for Africa's future growth and development is its own people. Unlike other regions of the world, Africa has 1.3 billion people. And compared to other regions, these are very young people, which means this is the future market of the world. And that's the greatest factor that Africa has. The second factor, it has 60% of the global arable land, fertile land, that is. So whatever we say are factors of growth at the moment in the world, land remains the key factor. I think the world will require food and food security. So if there is peace in Africa, and if African governments would put in good policies, chances are high that Africa in future will do extremely well in terms of taking advantage of the arable land it has compared to other regions which do not have comparable land and as well as fertile land. In minerals, yes, Africa is extremely rich with minerals. Not all African countries. Some are rich in minerals, oil, and however, Africa does not beneficiate these minerals. Up to now, Africa remains drawing on raw material as fresh as it is, shipped out of the continent, and the beneficiation is done outside. The African Union Agenda 2063, it is the vision of the entire continent. It came about when African leaders and African people came together to put together this agenda, in which it is called Agenda 2063, because in the year 2063, the African Union would be celebrating its centenary. And the vision is that by 2063, Africa wants to see itself as a developed country, wants to see itself having resolved major challenges that it faces, such as the lack of infrastructure, health issues. It has to deal with more trade, and you can see with the African Free Trade Agreement signed in recent years, attempts are being made, and a number of other factors. I think more importantly, it also speaks to the agents of Africa and Africans that whatever project that takes place on the African continent should and must be led by Africans themselves. It's part of the Agenda 2063, the need to have what we call strategic partners. And China is among those countries that is a strategic player on Africa's quest for development. And similarly, there are also Western countries. The United States is a strategic player and partner for Africa's development. You have European Union, your Great Britain, Germany, Japan, and quite a number of others. So I think Africans realize that they need their assistance, they need their help, they need to work with other players from outside the African continent. However, in doing so, they must be at the driving seat. For the past 15 years or so, China has been Africa's #1 trading partner, especially for South Africa. It has been the most important trading partner. So that's its starting point. And the investments that China is making on the African continent, including in South Africa, it is making a huge difference in terms of increased employment. A number of companies, almost 10,000 Chinese companies are on the African continent, and the bulk of those companies are here in South Africa as their headquarters. And this is also attracting. It is not just a question of China. Because of China's investments, it's now attracting your traditional partners, your Western European countries are coming in due to South Africa's association and close partnership with China and within BRICS. We also see more Russia is coming in. We also see Brazil and others. And therefore, I think China is an important player in South Africa's economy and across the African continent. President Xi Jinping is talking about the new quality productive forces. And that's looking at modernization through science and technology as we enter the fourth industrial revolution, an area in which both South Africa and the rest of the African continent remains far behind. It is quite important to pay more attention in this more specialized areas of cooperation. Cooperation in space, for instance, because space is not just for military purposes. I think it is important that you have cooperation at a China, a South Africa level, as well as certain provinces within China could have relationship with provinces in South Africa, university to university partnership, and individual exchange programs. I think they go a long way in advancing the relationship and bringing in an important aspect to any relationship, which is people to people. I think that if it is done well, it will be one of the greatest achievements of modern era of relationships among nation states. Indeed, I think our starting point should always be that BRICS is not anti-West. However, global South countries are concerned with the weaponization of the dollar, the weaponization of what we call global public goods, such as SWIFT, the monies that countries are putting in the US reserves, which have been weaponized. I think in the post-Ukraine conflict, we've seen United States and Western countries seizing, taking over these resources, which violates international law. So I think that is prompting global South countries to come up with alternative mechanisms to increase trade. So I do not think we're going to see anytime soon a currency called BRICS currency. I think it will take more years, if not decades, to come about. But that does not mean that the process of de-dollarization is not taking place. It is indeed taking place, because if countries avoid the dollar and trade using their own currency, whether it's yuan or the rand or any other rupee and other global South currencies in their own trade, it has a huge impact on the US. It is a huge impact, a negative impact on the Western world, that the dollar SWIFT process and a number of other factors are pillars of the post-1945 world order led by the United States and Western world. Therefore, if we start chipping on them and trade among ourselves, as Saudi Arabia is doing and many other countries are doing, that they're no longer using the petrodollar. They are now selling oil to China using yuan, for instance. And a number of trade has taken place. Trade with China and Russia, China with Iran,